Joy class?
Yep. Yeah, I just started recording.
Yep. Yeah, I got a little notification. All right. So for those that are here, and I'm not sure who's who, I would say, if one of you don't know me, we are working in close connection with Suffolk County Department of Health. Many have complained about the nitrates or concerns about the nitrates in the water body known as Cana Lake in my district. And as part of the good finishing of making sure this project comes to a good end, we want to round this out with what's available, what systems are available. This conversation will be limited only to the subject matter. I know there's a lot of other complaints about traffic studies and traffic direction, things like that. Contact my office. I'm not going to address it during here. I'm also very honored to have Deputy County Executive Peter Scully online. He has been a guru along with an amazing team for the Department of Health. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Scully, Deputy County Executive Peter Scully. Let him do some introductions, and I'll stand on the side until such time as I need a question answered.
Thank you, Legislator Thorne. And on behalf of County Executive Steve Malone, thank you for arranging this community meeting. We have developed a very strong working relationship with you in a very short period of time, addressing concerns around Canaan Lake, and we appreciate your leadership. I'm joined tonight by Sarah Lansdale, our Director of Planning, Elizabeth Alexander, who's a Senior Government Liaison Officer with our County Executive Office, and Julia Priolo, a Principal Environmental Analyst with the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. And we want to talk to you a little bit about a program that is available for folks who are concerned about water quality and want to do the right thing and upgrade their systems and to better protect the environment. I think we have a slide deck we'd like to use. Can somebody control the screen? So since County Executive Malone took office, the county has really been working aggressively to address a longstanding problem resulting from reliance on septic systems under the branding Reclaim Our Water. Next slide. It's not a new issue. The reliance on cesspools and septic systems had been identified as a huge problem for Suffolk County as far back as the 1960s. Most of Nassau County is served by sewers, where wastewater from homes is collected in serious pipes and delivered to centralized treatment facilities, sewer facilities. In Suffolk County, alternatively, 74% of our county is not served by sewers, and it's long been predicted that if the county were not served by sewers over the long term, we would see degraded water quality, and we're seeing those effects now. But the good news is that after decades of inaction, we finally have in Suffolk County a long-term plan to deal with that issue. Next slide. The Suffolk County Legislature in March of 2020 unanimously approved the finding statement for the Suffolk County Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan, which is the county's first long-term plan to address the fact that much of Suffolk County is without sewer infrastructure and that cesspools and septic systems have been identified as the single most significant contributor to excess nitrogen pollution. This plan was the result of 3 years of effort that brought in the very best experts nationwide, and it's been recognized nationally as the gold standard for a long-term wastewater infrastructure plan. We're not here to talk about the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan tonight. You just should know that it's out there. The grant program we're going to talk about is a small part and a first step, but the question we'll be answering over the next couple of years is whether the Suffolk County Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan will be implemented, whether we will have the long-term plan that we need to reverse decades of nitrogen pollution to water quality. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia Priolo from our Department of Health Services to talk to you a little bit about the septic improvement program and related issues related to water quality. Next slide.
Okay, thank you everyone for your interest. I am from the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. My name is Julia Priolo. I'm also joined by Ken Siegel from the Department of Health Services, the Chief of Office of Ecology. And I'll be going over the septic improvement program. But first, why are we here? Why are we talking about that? Why are we talking about the septic improvement? Here in Suffolk County, we all live atop a sole source aquifer. That is where we all get our drinking water from. No matter if you're on public water, private water wells, we all reside upon our groundwater or drinking water source. That's approximately 1.5 plus million people who live and work here. The grand majority of us rely on on-site systems that we're not connected to a sewage treatment plant. And so actually there's 380,000 of these on-site wastewater disposal systems that do not actually treat the wastewater before it's disposed. And where does that wastewater get disposed? Back down into our groundwater, into our aquifer that I had just mentioned, we all get our drinking water from. Not only do we have a very, very large amount of these on-site disposal systems, the majority of them, 250,000 of them, predate the simple septic tank requirement that has been in place since 1973 here in Suffolk County. And where else, why are we concerned about this? Obviously for our drinking water, but also for our water that we're surrounded by. We are on an island here. We're surrounded by marine waters and fresh waters. We live next to our water bodies. And this groundwater where our wastewater infiltrates into, that is what feeds these water bodies, our estuaries, our bays, and our harbors, and Cannon Lake specifically. All of the untreated wastewater gets into these water bodies and actually wreaks a lot of havoc. I'll go over some of the issues with too much nitrogen that's coming from many sources, including these on-site wastewater disposal systems, and what that means to our water bodies. Some of the water quality impacts that occur when we have too much nitrogen in our water bodies results in harmful algal blooms. Nitrogen is like a fertilizer, you can consider it, as it actually feeds plants and it makes the plants grow. And in our water bodies, what kind of plants do we often have? Actually microscopic plants called algae. And one of the major impacts we see when there's too much nitrogen in a water body, whether that be a marine water body like the bay or a freshwater body like a lake, we see harmful algal blooms. And the result of harmful algal blooms can be decrease in shellfish populations. Here we are with a chart of hard clam populations in Great South Bay, as well as bay scallops. These have all reduced in part because of the harmful algal blooms that we've been recording in our water bodies. Harmful algal blooms can also result in mass fish die-offs. That's what we actually can see here in this picture on the bottom left-hand screen. All of that silver on the bottom, those are all fish that are belly up in a water body. And that's because when now that harmful algal bloom is in the water and all those plants eventually die off, they suck up all the oxygen that's available in that water body. And oxygen, these animals, fish, including fish and crabs, they all need oxygen to breathe just like we do. And so one major consequence of having too much nitrogen and too much algae in the water body is a fish kill. Harmful algal blooms themselves, other than harming animals like shellfish and fish, can also harm humans and can also just be unsightly. So we do see beach closures and closures of areas where we can obtain shellfish from. You can no longer eat some shellfish like clams and oysters in certain areas due to they wouldn't be safe for humans or even animals to eat. Some other impacts of having too much water, too much nitrogen in our water bodies is shown on this map here. This is actually a map of Long Island that is created by Stony Brook University scientists each year. And it maps out all of the water quality impairments we have been seeing out in our water bodies, not only marine water bodies where we see things like brown tide. If you see where my mouse is on the screen, this brown area in the Great South Bay, right in your backyard, is an area where we see brown tide year after year. And then we do see inland these spots of green, which is a toxic blue-green algae. This not only creates the water, the pond to turn bright green, blue-green, it actually is toxic. And we've had dogs die after swimming in these water bodies. Very unfortunate consequences. And it is all tied back to nitrogen. Here's a few more shots of what we see at Great South Bay during brown tide that we see every summer. The water is the color of coffee, and animals that can get away from here are getting away. But unfortunately, animals that cannot leave this area do end up dying. But however, it doesn't have to be that way. Here's another image of Rich's Bay, actually, that does have cleaner water due to its link to the Atlantic Ocean and being well flushed. And we do have shellfish populations there, which enable other organisms like big fishing populations, like recreational fishing and commercial fishing opportunities, as well as recreation. And so where does all this nitrogen come from? Well, we know based on the information that we received from the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan. Nitrogen discharge from on-site wastewater sources represents the single greatest factor that can be managed to restore and protect our waters from the impacts of nutrient enrichment related water quality degradation. So on this image, you'll see nitrogen molecules originating from on-site systems. This includes systems that have a septic tank before the leaching pool and going into the groundwater that eventually leach out into the bay or the lake. And you'll also see someone here fertilizing their lawn. Nitrogen does also come from fertilizer, but how much comes from each source? That was one of the major goals of the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan. And here's the result. Countywide, the vast majority of the nitrogen in our groundwater and in our bays is coming from on-site wastewater systems. The septic tanks and cesspools that the majority of us rely on. However, it does also come from fertilizer, and that's this green slice in this pie chart that says 17.3% of the nitrogen is coming from fertilizer. We also have about approximately 3% on average coming from pet waste, and also atmospheric deposition. Nitrogen coming from the atmosphere is a smaller slice of the pie. But as you can see here, 68.6% of the nitrogen is coming from these on-site wastewater systems. Excuse me. Now I was getting a little technical. I was throwing around some words like cesspools and septic tanks. So sorry for all the information on this slide. I just wanted to get you used to some of the terms I'm using. And so cesspool, that is, there's an image here. Sometimes these cesspools are made out of actual bricks, rocks, or a precast structure. The pipe comes right out of the house with all the wastewater and is dumped right into the cesspool and leaches out. Over time, there is, as I mentioned before, over 250,000 of these cesspools here just in Suffolk County. Although they were banned from new construction, if you're building a new house, you can't put a new cesspool in. Since 1973, that was quite a long time ago, cesspools are still around. Cesspools are little more than holes in the ground that discharge raw, untreated human waste and can contaminate surface and groundwater. We know that they are contaminating it. However, in 2019, a loophole was closed where homeowners can no longer replace an existing cesspool with another cesspool. They would need to at least come up to the current conventional septic system at a minimum. And so what do I mean by a conventional septic system? That means there's a septic tank before the leaching structure that holds solids and can be pumped out from time to time. There's approximately 110,000 of these in Suffolk County. And this was the standard as of 1973. No new technology about a septic tank. But here, what I'm talking about today is a septic improvement. I'm specifically talking about these systems that I'm going to refer to as IAs. That acronym stands for Innovative and Alternative On-Site Wastewater Treatment Systems. We do right now have greater than 2,000 of these systems in Suffolk County, and they are advanced wastewater treatment systems that can remove up to 70% of nitrogen prior to the wastewater being discharged. So it's treating that wastewater before discharged. They've been allowed on a voluntary basis here in Suffolk County since 2016, and they were mandated for new construction and major renovation projects as of July 1st of last year. And so if a new house is being built, you have to come up to the current standard, the new standard. You must treat your wastewater, essentially, is what we're saying. So the image here on the left side I have shows a box between a septic tank and a leaching system. And that's one way you can consider what this nitrogen removing system is. You do still have a septic compartment or a septic tank, but there's this extra portion that where the wastewater is treated, and then it is released into the leaching system. And as you can see here in this image, nitrogen is then released down into the groundwater, which eventually does enter our surface waters. Depending on how close you live to the water body, the faster that water will enter that water body. However, eventually, all that groundwater will eventually enter a water body unless it's pulled up by a drinking water well. And so there are many types. Let me just back up for 1 second. There are several types of these nitrogen reducing sanitary systems that I'll refer to as IAs. And they're made all over the world and all over the country. These manufacturers are reaching out to us and saying, hey, I want to sell my system here in Suffolk County. We heard you have a lot of systems that you have to upgrade and you're having a lot of water quality problems. And they want to sell their systems to you and they're competing for business here. However, we want to make sure they actually work here. And here at the health department, we are the regulatory authority that says who can sell and who can't sell here. And that's based on how well they work and how well they remove nitrogen. And so this slide shows several different names and types of these IA systems that are approved for use here in Suffolk County. We have a phased approval process. However, these 6 that you see here on the slide are ones that are approved for use through our grant program. We do have other technologies that are currently in the experimental and pilot phase. So below these 2 phases of general use and provisional use approval phase. However, those don't qualify for the grant program right now. So I'll just reiterate here some of these IAs. I'll tell you some of the names here. HydroAction and FujiClean are currently in our general use approval phase, and the Septic Star, the Norweco Hydrokinetic, Arenco Advantex, and Norweco Singular are in the provisional use approval phase, and they all are currently removing nitrogen and are approved for use. And you can see they all have different shapes and sizes and lids and compartments and pipes, but essentially they all do the same thing. They allow for nitrogen to go through the nitrogen cycle in order for it to reduce the nitrogen in your wastewater and release it as N2 gas and release into the atmosphere. N2 gas is an inert gas that's currently 70% of our nitrogen, of our atmosphere. And so there are several different types, but really the health department is the one that's making sure they all work. So you know which one to go with. A lot of times homeowners ask us, which one should I use? And we do recommend that you work with your design professional who's going to help you design what sanitary system to use, which size, how much leaching you need based on the size of your home, as well as your selected installer of the system. They may have some recommendations of which one would be best suited for your site. Do you have high groundwater? I know a lot of us do, especially the neighborhood around Cannon Lake. High groundwater is an issue there, and certain systems may be better suited for that. And so this is where the wastewater gets treated, and then it gets released into the leaching system. And this is what is important for those sites with high groundwater, especially around Cannon Lake. So an IA system treats wastewater. And because that wastewater is treated, you can utilize different types of leaching than you would have been able to use with a septic system. With a septic system, the wastewater does not get treated enough. And so here with an IA, where that wastewater comes out essentially crystal clear, you can utilize a pressurized shallow drain field. That's what I have an image of here on the right-hand side. After this wastewater leaves the IA system, it enters into these shallow leaching systems. This is actually a cross-section here where it's pressurized into this compartment. This is only max 2 feet underground. So if you have groundwater really high in your area, this is something that allows you to not have to go towards a very expensive and really unsightly retaining wall system. That's what I have a picture of here on the left-hand side. This is a concrete retaining wall that has truckloads and truckloads of fill added to it. This is what's necessary if you use a conventional septic system with conventional leaching system, because you need to get that leaching up above the groundwater. You cannot just discharge right into the groundwater. And those systems can be very costly. $50,000 easily for a retaining wall system with all that fill. However, if you are able to use an IA system, the ones I'm talking about here, with this specialized pressurized shallow drain field, you can knock that price tag down to about $28,000 is usually what we see here when we go to pay out projects that utilize this type of system. Okay, and so that was as technical as I'm going to get about what an IA does. I'm going to hand the mic over to Ken Ziegel here in our office for a few slides, and then we'll get into information about the grants themselves and how and what you need to know in order to apply. Okay.
Thank you, Julia. Good evening, everyone. So, yeah, as Peter mentioned before, the Subwatershed's wastewater plan was a 4 years in the making, and essentially establishes our roadmap for when, where, and how to implement wastewater upgrades for these 380,000 systems, essentially by creating priority areas where we want to attack the most vulnerable areas to nitrogen loading first. So this graphic on the screen right now, the areas in purple show those highest priority areas. Couple other things that I want to mention just regarding innovative alternative systems and some of the findings from the Subwatershed's wastewater plan. So another finding from the Subwatershed's wastewater plan was that for Suffolk County, sewering is an important component, but for the most part, in most locations, these innovative alternative systems are much more cost effective, upwards potentially of 2 to 3 times lower cost than sewering, which was an important finding. Also, that these systems remove other contaminants from the wastewater, such as emerging contaminants. You hear that word a lot in the news today. And there's still research being done on that, but we do know that these systems help reduce those contaminants. And then, the last thing is that the word innovative alternative sounds like it's brand new, but this technologies have been, hard tested in Suffolk County, but also tested for over a decade and used for over a decade in other jurisdictions. But ultimately, the study itself calls for, over 172,000 wastewater upgrades during the primary program phase 2, which attacks these purple areas. And then during the initial phase, program phase, what we call phase 1, which is now, we just want to, make as much headway as we can, which includes installing these systems through the grant program, as well as establishing a revenue source, and ultimately will fund the entire program. Next slide, Julia. So real quick, this is, I think, the last slide for me. I just wanted to mention that one of the things that this plan did was break the county down into 190 individual water bodies and determine what their watersheds were, where the groundwater was contributing to these water bodies, how much nitrogen should be removed from the environment to restore the water body to acceptable water quality, establish priority ranks, as I mentioned before, and establish where the nitrogen is coming from. So I just wanted to share this output from the study for Canaan Lake, which is part of the Patchogue River system, as many of you know. So in Canaan Lake alone, there's over 600 homes contributing nitrogen to the groundwater in Canaan Lake. That's over 18,000 pounds of nitrogen a year going to the lake from wastewater. That's a lot. Over 77% of the nitrogen for this particular system, this particular water bodies, come from on-site disposal systems. So a significant amount of the nitrogen, and for the Patchogue River system, I think it's over 180,000 pounds per year of nitrogen. And as Julie mentioned before, think about it as fertilizer. And a recommended load reduction goal for this area for nitrogen is 93%, and that's why this program and these grants and implementing these technologies is so important. And next slide, Julia.
Thank you, Ken. Just wanted to point out, here's the Cannon Lake that we're
Thank you.
discussing.
Yeah.
And you can see it's surrounded by that red area. Represents the 0 to 2 travel time, right on the water.
Yep. And Julia, I want to mention that Canaan Lake obviously is the highest priority rank in the plan itself. It's priority rank #1, which means first in line for getting wastewater upgrades.
And so we are making headway, as I mentioned. We have over 2,000 of these IA systems installed in Suffolk County so far. In Patchogue specifically, so the 11772 zip code, we currently have 26 IAs installed, and that's those are just replacements of existing systems that went through this grant program. And so 4 so far this year, and so we are likely to see that number double. Here's an example of a system that's installed in East Patchogue. This is one of those hydrocarbon systems at a home that replaced an old cesspool. And this property is right on a lake too, Hedges Creek in Dunton Lake. And so now that wastewater is going to be treated before it's released into the water body. But as Ken mentioned, we still have hundreds of thousands of homes in the Patchogue River District. And as I mentioned before, over 300,000 systems in Suffolk County that still do need to be upgraded in order for us to restore and protect our water bodies. And so the goal of replacing those right now is replacing home sanitary systems in existing homes, but however, providing financial funding for them so that it makes it easier for us, and incentivize this. And it can be costly, as I mentioned before. That $28,000 price tag is not an easy one that we're ready to just take out of our savings or borrow in order to replace our sanitary system. So hence the Septic Improvement Program. It's administered by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services here in Yaphank. We have a website specific for this program, www.reclaimourwater.info. And from there, you can also go to the Septic Improvement Program page specifically. I'll have this information again at the end, but we do have a direct phone number and an email address for this program. The email address is septicdemo@suffolkcountiny.ny.gov, and the phone number is 631-852-5811. So let's get into the details about the Septic Improvement Program to fund the IA installation at your home. We administer 2 different grants here at the Health Department. A Suffolk County grant, referenced as the SIP or Septic Improvement Program. That's a $10,000 base grant with additional $5,000 options if a pressurized shallow drain field leaching system is necessary, and or if the homeowner qualifies as low to moderate income. An additional $5,000 towards the installation cost is available to LMI applicants. That's that low to moderate income based on federal HUD guidelines. There is also a pilot program for an additional $5,000 to cover the cost of design services. I mentioned previously that you'll be working with a design professional to design your sanitary system. New York State Septic System Replacement Program is the second grant that is administered here at Suffolk County, which is an additional $10,000. And most property owners are eligible for both. So right off the bat, you can imagine having at least $20,000, potentially more, going towards the cost of the installation of a new IA system. However, sometimes that doesn't cover the full price, and especially also for those design services, if a family doesn't have extra funding laying around for that, there is a program that we partnered with CDCLI for a low interest loan, where if homeowners are approved for one of these grants, they can be approved up to $10,000 loan through CDCLI, where there's no application fees and no closing costs. And so specifically, their website is shown here, cdcli.org/septic loan program, but we do have a link to their website from our reclaimourwater.info website. And I do just want to mention there are other funding sources in the towns of Southampton, East Hampton, and Shelter Island. However, that is not applicable to the Cannon Lake community. And so SIP grant funding is issued in a priority order. Here is a map of Suffolk County that has several colors around on it, but that shows the different priority areas. And you can see the majority of the priority is near the coastline, both on the south and the North Shore, and also surrounding inland water bodies like lakes and ponds. And I've zoomed in to the Cannon Lake community here and circled it in black, and you'll see the majority of that land area surrounding that water body is in priority 1 and priority 2. So definitely a high priority, and applicants in this area receive a higher score. Another part of the scoring system is based on the condition of the existing system. Systems that are in failure do receive higher scores as well. For example, a catastrophic failure. This is not something anyone would ever hope for, but we do see it all the time, unfortunately. Caved in sanitary systems like this one here, made of blocks, bricks and blocks, caved in. That is an example of a catastrophic failure. And also block cesspools that haven't yet caved in, they are also considered a failure. Here's some pictures of some cesspools that we've seen submitted to our office. And these are very common. As I mentioned, 250,000 of these block cesspools are found throughout Suffolk County, especially in communities that were developed prior to 1973. So SIP grants are scored as their application, SIP grant applications are scored as they come in. If the project, if the parcel has a catastrophic failure, it automatically receives a score of 100. And then if the project is considered a failure, but it's not catastrophic, it receives a score of 90. And that's based on the documentation that's submitted. And then the scoring goes on from there with 80, 70, and 60 based on the priority area. And so catastrophic failures those grants are expedited and issued immediately upon complete application submission. And non-catastrophic failures, those ones that receive a score of 90, those grants are issued weekly and are based on the date of their complete application. And for all non-failures, they're issued in priority order. And these grants are also issued weekly, and they're based on the date of the complete application after all the higher scores are issued grants. So I have a lot of information on this. However, it is right from our website. I'm just going to read through it because there is some information you may need to know before applying. The county SIP grant is not designed as a reimbursement program. Applicants must receive a grant prior to installation of an IA system. That is because grant awardees must select their installer from our approved list. So on our website, we have a list of all the installers that are approved to install these systems and that have applied to be part of our program. The reason why we ask them to apply is because we are making sure they set their prices for the year, and we post that information on our website so that you know what you're getting into before you even pick up the phone and call them. You have an idea of how much the sanitary system would cost for you based on each installer. And so the applicants, the grant awardees, assign their grant payment directly to that installer, or we call them a vendor. And so the grants are not paid to the homeowner. We're paying your installer directly so that you don't have to do, send a check to them and then you get reimbursed. It's no out of pocket for that grant amount. And so the payments are then made by the county to that vendor. However, we do have that second grant, the state SSRP grant. In limited times, we can process those as a reimbursement only if that homeowner receives just a state grant and not that county grant. But for most applications, as I mentioned before, both county and state grants are coupled together so that you can receive the full grant amount, and we then require you to utilize that contractor on our approved list. These grants are currently subject to federal and state taxes, unfortunately, but we are looking to have that reversed. However, applicants should consult with their own tax and legal and accounting advisors regarding any of these tax implications. And audit control will not process payments to that installer unless there is a W-9 for each homeowner on the file here. The required documentation that you need to submit when you apply for a grant includes a copy of a property deed, proof of homeowner's insurance, a copy of the most recent property tax bill, and a copy of a CO or equivalent. This is to ensure that the property is eligible for the grant, essentially a single family dwelling or a single family dwelling with accessory structure, and that the property does not have any liens. If applicable, if you believe that you may fall under the low to moderate income, or if you're looking to apply for the low to moderate income additional $5,000, we ask you to submit your most recent tax return, 1040 form. And please be sure to redact your social security number. We don't need to have that information. And if applicable, if you feel your sanitary system is failing, please submit that proof of system failure, including if you think it's a block cesspool. You may have to have a professional come to your site and open up your system and take a look, take photos. If you have your system pumped frequently, submit any of those service receipts. If there's pictures of things backing up into your home, or a collapse in your yard, photo documentation of that would be considered proof of system failure. And if the property is owned in a trust or an LLC and corporation, but is still eligible as a single family home, additional documentation is required for those applicants. And I mentioned that we have the list of approved IA installers for our SIP program on our website, and here is a snapshot of that list. There's over 20 installers that have applied to be part of the grant program throughout Suffolk County, and we provide you with their address, their email address, and their phone number. And this is on that reclaimerwater.info/septic improvement program website. And we also provide this to all of our grant awardees after they have their permit in place. We say, okay, it looks like you are getting this type of sanitary system. Please choose an installer from this list and get back to us with their price quote. And what we actually do is we review that price quote before the sanitary system is installed, before you've even agreed to which installer you want to use. We review that price quote and make sure that they're actually charging what they said they're going to charge. And we want to make sure this grant funding goes as far as it can towards getting these IA systems installed, and that this grant funding has value towards our homeowners that go through our program. And so I do have some statistics on the current status of our program. Countywide, over 300 applications have come in the past 5 years. The average applications we receive per month this year is 77. So this is quite a popular program. But it is necessary. We have over 1,800 county grants issued to date, and nearly 1,900 of those New York State grants issued by our office to date. The majority of those have turned into installations of those IAs already. 1,140 IAs have been installed through our grant funded program. And Suffolk County was recently received an additional $20 million towards that New York State SSRP grant program here to continue our program into the future. And this grant funding enables Suffolk County to implement those really important upgrades in accordance with the timeline in that subwatersheds wastewater plan that we were mentioning before. This is prior to the establishment of a county-wide wastewater management district and recurring revenue stream that the subwatersheds wastewater plan recommends. And here I have just a chart showing the timeline of how many installations we've had of IA systems since 2017 and the total amount to date. And I did just want to point out that you could see some really high numbers in this time period. Probably can't see the details, but this is the March 2020 time period. March, April, May, June, July 2020. I don't know if you can remember that time, but I sure do. It was the beginning of the COVID pandemic and stay-at-home period. And we found that we had a large increase in cesspool failures during that stay-at-home period, because our cesspools, our old black cesspools that have been underground for 50 years are starting to fail. They're not used to having people home all the time. You know, people that aren't always there, people that we usually go to work or school are now always there, taking showers, utilizing the facilities, and increasing the amount of wastewater that needs to go in these systems. And so we did see a huge spike in cesspool failures during COVID, and we continue to see them now. But that is what those spikes represent. So I'm just going to end with some photos of what to expect when you go ahead with your IA installation. This is a construction project. It will involve a lot of excavation. We need to go in, your installer will go in and abandon your existing sanitary system. You know, they'll pump it out, fill it with sand, crush it, so that it is safe once it's covered back up. You don't want to leave that unabandoned. And then they will dig the holes where they're going to put the IA unit. And then they also have to dig the area where you're going to put your leaching system. And so this is all designed in advance with your design professional and permitted through the health department. But it is a big project. But afterwards, it can be hidden nicely. The IA system is different than a conventional septic system in one major way. You need to be able to access that IA system from the ground level. So you can see here those lids that you can see in this previous slide, those green lids on some of these different IA systems, they're at ground level so that your operations and maintenance provider, your O&M provider, will be able to go into there and service the system. Also, not too frequently, but sometimes the health department will ask you for permission to go to your site and test it to make sure that that technology is still working as it is supposed to. And so here are some pictures of post installation where those lids are still accessible, but they may be hidden into the landscape. Here's in a garden area. We also have some pictures just where the system's right into the lawn or into another landscape bed. These are safe to be walked on, to be mowed over. They are sturdy covers. And there are other components, control panels and air vents, because these have electrical components. And so these air vents and control panels can be tucked into the landscape as well, or just, you know, put somewhere on your property that doesn't irritate you, but it does need to be accessible as well. And we do have a lot more information on our Reclaim Our Water website. That's reclaimourwater.info. And that's also where you apply online for this grant. You could request a paper application, but we do encourage you to go online since there's a lot of information there. When you go to this website, there's a blue button at the top of the screen that says sign up now for the Septic Improvement Program. And remember to compile your required documentation, you know, your deed, your homeowner's insurance, tax bill, CO, and your most recent tax return and proof of system failure if applicable. And you can upload that information right to our website. We'll receive it and contact you if there's anything missing, or you can contact us at the phone number or email address here to find out more about this grant program to replace your system with an IA system and remove that nitrogen from the wastewater. So I will open it up for questions and comments. That's the end of my slide presentation.
Can I just add one thing? I am an eyes-on guy. That's how I put my eyes on everything. And you saw a slide with me out there with Deputy Executive Scully and the team. And you can physically see the difference between this murky, disgusting, fresh sewer coming out of the house and what was in the secondary tank. So I'm not encouraging you should or you should not, but we should, you know, you should consider it at least. I think it's a good idea to keep that lake as clean as we possibly can and be responsible stewards of our earth. So that's, I just want to add that editorial in that I physically saw the system in action and it does work.
And Julia, I had two quick follow-up questions for you. One of the things that we're finding that, and that's part of the beauty of this program, is that the cost of the system itself with the grants, we're generally finding homeowners, it's significantly less out of pocket to install one of these systems with the grant than it is had the homeowner had to move forward with a conventional system and pay fully out of pocket, right?
Absolutely. God forbid you have to, you wake up to a collapsed cesspool and you have to get your system replaced. You have an immediate decision. Do I go ahead and do a conventional septic system, which you are allowed to do, or do I go ahead with an IA system? Usually people don't have to make decisions about putting a new sanitary system in their lifetime, but that chance might come up. And we do see that out-of-pocket cost when utilizing these grants is much less than when you go for an IA than if you were going to go for a conventional septic system.
Yeah, this is Deputy County Executive Scully. I just want to echo that the legislators and the county executive wanted to make sure that this program is both easy for homeowners and affordable. And so if you explore the Reclaim Our Waters website, you'll find there's an electronic application process that makes it possible for you to do all of the application work directly from your home. And as Ken and Julia are indicating, what the county executive's goal was, is if a person suffers a failure of their system and is facing the cost of replacing their system out of pocket, we want to make it less expensive for them to come to us for a grant and replace the old technology with new technology, paying less money out of pocket. And that's what the goal of the program is.
I have a question.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Denise Lavery, and I had I had Clear River put in take out my cesspool. I had them, and put in a septic system. So does that mean that I'm good? I mean, it doesn't work that great, because when I was seeing the how you were showing the ones that are put in, mine aren't all level, because the way my water, the way those lids are, the ground grew around it, and it doesn't look like those pictures. They're definitely not totally level because of the earth moved. And I had problems here in December. I mean, stuff was pouring back in, and nobody ever came to tell me what was going on.
Did you call the health department and request assistance?
No. Health department?
Yeah, we regulate the industry, right? So if you're having a problem with the industry and it's non-responsive, we would want to know about that. We would want to have staff come out and take a look at your system and make sure that you get the response you need from the people who are responsible for the installation. So if we could just get contact information, if you're continuing to have problems with your system, that's something we want to know about. We want to send staff out there to take a look. We want to provide assistance to you.
Okay.
And furthermore, if anybody's on the call and had some kind of experience, certainly call the Department of Health, because they're the ones that are going to respond. But if you might get situated, Denise, call me, and we'll go out. We'll meet with the Department of Health and go out there as a team and figure out what's going on. It's not acceptable if you don't get proper service now.
No, it's not. It happened December, like several times. I had water pouring in my
Give us a
basement.
call.
Mr. Lavery, did you participate in the grant program?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so could you just, the name on the application was Laverty, Laverty?
No T. Lavery.
And-
Lavery.
And the address?
5 Virginia Place, Patchogue, Canaan Lake.
All right,
Canaan.
so Ken and Julia will pull the file. We'll be in touch and we'll figure this out.
Okay, great. I really
Yeah, that will,
appreciate it.
please.
And Julia, what's the when a homeowner has a complete application submitted for both catastrophic failure and not catastrophic, even if it's just an old block cesspool or a cesspool before it's sold before 1973, the turnaround time in the grants is very quick now, right? Isn't it about 1 to 2 weeks?
Yes, absolutely. For those completed catastrophic failures, as I said, that's immediately, as soon as we get that information, we begin processing that grant and get it out to you. We even, if it's necessary, if you really wanted to, you could come pick up the grant agreements here in Yaphank in our office, or we can mail it out to you directly. That's usually within a few days. For those non-catastrophic failures, block cesspool, once we get that complete application, you're really up there at the top of the list. And so approximately 2 weeks after that is when you can expect the grant to be issued.
I have a couple of questions.
Hi there, go ahead.
Okay, any idea how long it's gonna be before they get the exemptions? So we don't have to pay taxes on the grant? I know they
Yeah,
were working on it.
I can speak to that. We have pending right now in the office of the Secretary of Agriculture for the federal government, request for a determination that the grants that are issued under this program are intended primarily to benefit the environment. And we're waiting for that determination to be issued. So, we've been very close before, but we feel we're within several months of hearing from the Secretary of Agriculture that determination has been made. It's unfortunate that the circumstances that exist today exist. That didn't have to be this way, but we think we're pretty close to a solution, and we're willing to keep in touch with you and let you know how that goes. We know that's a significant concern for people who are considering whether to participate in the program. So if Legislator Thorne knows how we can keep in touch with you, we'll let you know how we're doing on that issue.
Another question is, are the grants done by house or by homeowner? If I own 2 houses on Canaan Lake, can I get a grant for each?
1 grant per parcel. Yes,
The parcel, so I can get a grant for each?
yes, you can.
Okay.
We want all of those old systems to be replaced.
Right, now you showed all that electrical work. If you have no room on your electrical panel, who pays for the electrical upgrades?
So usually the electric is involved, is part of the installation. I do see that on the invoices from the installer. So you'll get a good sense when you have that price quote from the IA installer. They usually have electricians under them. And then you'll know, if it's significant amount, the grant might not be able to pay for all of the total system installation that includes that. But like I mentioned, there's that $10,000 county and $10,000 state that goes towards installation costs, plus those additional optional $5,000 incentives. And so any remaining cost would be the property owner's responsibility.
Okay. Can I get a vendor to give me an estimate before I apply for the grant?
Yes, absolutely. All those vendors that are on the list I shared and on our website, they're familiar, and you can even, they might not even say, do you have a grant yet? Like you just say, I'm looking to do the grant program. Even if you don't have full plans yet, you may also still be able to get to speak with them and get a general idea of how much it may be. Once you have that actual site plan that shows, where your groundwater is, which system you're going to use, what type of leaching structures, then they'll really be able to hone in on the price.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may too, just as a general information, 854-1400, that's my office, 854-1400. If at some point there's a disconnect, and I don't believe there will be, I'm sure Peter and Sarah and all those folks and Ken and Julia will be all over this Virginia thing. But if you ever need additional, call me. Call me, we'll call them and we'll get to the end of it and we'll figure out what's happening and we'll fix it. But 854-1400 is my contact number here in my office.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I have one question regarding the maintenance. I'm just curious, you had mentioned maintenance costs. That's, I'm assuming, not part of a grant. That would be ongoing maintenance. And just an estimate as to how often and how much that may be for the homeowners.
Yes. So part of our grant program, we require that the first 3 years of the O&M contract is part of the installation. And that way the grant funding can go towards the first 3 years of the O&M contract. And then after that 3 years is complete, we do require that you renew with either that same O&M provider or a different O&M provider that is able to service your system, and we can provide, who is able to service that system. We generally see per year the O&M costs, depending on the system type and the provider, to be approximately $250 to $300 per year. And that consists of usually consists of 2 service dates where they come, open all the lids, clean out any filters, inspect it, sample it, things like that. And that's usually what we see here, 2 times a year, $250, $300 a year after those first 3 years that are covered by the grant funding.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It is important to have maintenance on the system. It's important to make sure that they're working well, just like how we need inspections on our car to make sure that they're working well, because these IA systems are meant to remove nitrogen, and that is dependent on making sure that they're working well.
I always liken it to having a maintenance contract on, for example, your oil burner, which many people do, just to make sure that it's functioning correctly.
Okay, thank you very much.
One more question. Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely. We can provide the slides as well as the video to Legislator Thorne and provide it on our website.
Okay, thanks.
I'll be broadcasting it on my pages as well, Ray, and as well as, make it available to you if you need it. It's not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Dominic.
Legislator Thorne,
Hear from you soon.
we appreciate your leadership on this issue, and we know this will be the first of many community outreach that we do in your district.
Right, and soon we'll be announcing it in other languages, so the other population can understand it as well, which I'm excited about. So we'll be getting this out. All right.
I just have one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
I missed the first part of this. I'm just curious, are there deadlines for the New York State or SSRP, or is that ongoing as well?
They're both ongoing, rolling submission.
Okay,
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
perfect. Thanks.
And so, yes, I do invite you to watch the recording or view the slides that we'll be able to provide and share with all, so that you can see that some of the things that you may have missed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess if nobody has anything else, Director Lansdale or Pete?
No, I just want to thank you. Thank everyone for taking the time to participate. If you think of questions you had not asked, please email us at the Septic Demo email address or call the phone number indicated. I look forward to answering any additional questions we have, and we're definitely going to get to the bottom of what's going on at the Lavery House. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night.